This is Dr. Mark Hitchcock. Welcome you to another episode of Marking the Times. We appreciate every week you all taking time to watch these videos that we do. We try to keep them pretty brief so you don't have to take a long time to catch the gist of what we're talking about. And we like to bring some updates on things happening in the world, answer questions you all send to Facebook. And last couple weeks, I've been answering some questions. And I got another one that's a common question that's asked I thought I would answer this week. The person's asking a question about Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. Daniel 12, 14 to 13 is the kind of the conclusion or the epilogue to the book of Daniel. And in verse 4, it says that knowledge will increase, that many will go to and fro. And the person who sent the question says, Daniel 12:4 says knowledge will increase. I've heard it both ways, meaning actual knowledge increasing or knowledge of increasing of the book of Daniel for the Jews. Can you please explain? Thanks. One thing I just want to mention up front, and I put in another shameless plug, but I've got a book called 101 Answers to Most Asked Questions About the End Times. That question and a lot of others are answered in this book. So if you have a lot of questions about end time prophecy, this would be a good book to get. It'll answer a lot of your questions. And that's question number 11 in the book. I've titled this, Is the Recent Explosion of Knowledge a Sign of the Last Days? We all know that knowledge is exploding, and that's the way Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 has often been interpreted. It says, as for you, Daniel, conceal the words and seal up the book. Basically, that means preserve the book until the end of time. Many will go back and forth, or the old King James says, many will go to and fro, and knowledge will increase. Now, a lot of people have taken this, that many will go to and fro, to be the idea of increased travel. People go to and fro all over the world. We fly across the ocean and back. And so, it's this idea of increased speed and increased travel. So many have taken that way. And then when it says knowledge will increase, they look at the increase of knowledge in our world as a sign that Christ's coming is drawing near. There's all kinds of things like this out there on the internet, but here's one of these. It's called the knowledge doubling curve. And in this, the writer noticed that until 1900, human knowledge doubled about every century. By the end of World War II, knowledge was doubling every 25 years. Then today, in different areas, the doubling of knowledge is different. For example, nanotechnology is doubling every 2 years. Clinical knowledge every 18 months. But on average, human knowledge is doubling every 13 months. Now, all that means for me is I just keep getting farther and farther behind because, especially when it comes to technology, I'm already behind. I'm just kind of trying to get into the 21st century. But then it said this incredibly, according to IBM, the build-out of the Internet of Things will lead to the doubling of knowledge every 12 hours. So people look at this and say, man, this has got to be a sign of the times. I mean, just exponential mushrooming of knowledge in our world. And I do believe that the increase of knowledge will play into things, and that what we see happening with the internet and technology will allow the Antichrist, I think, to control the world. But I don't think that's what Daniel 12:4 is saying. The word here that's used, many will go to and fro or back and forth. The verb that's used here refers often in the scripture to movements of one's body to and fro in search of something, especially information. I mean, what I think this is referring to is the going back and forth of the eyes in diligent study of the Bible. So many will go to and fro, that is, their eyes will go back and forth on the pages of Scripture. And then it says, and knowledge will increase. And actually in the Hebrew, it's the knowledge will increase. So it's the knowledge, it's a particular knowledge. It's knowledge of Bible prophecy, particularly here the book of Daniel, and how it relates to what's happening in the world. Don Campbell, who was president at Dallas Seminary some years ago, and he has a great little book on Daniel. He says this cryptic expression, many will go here and there, is best understood to mean that people in the tribulation will run about seeking answers to questions about the climactic events of their times, and they will find those answers through increased knowledge of the book of Daniel. So I think this passage, the interpretation of it, refers to the end times, to the Jewish people who will be living during the tribulation. And they will go to and fro through this book, the book of Daniel, and their knowledge of what's happening in the world and of God's plan and God's purpose will increase. So it specifically applies to Jews in the end times. They're going to be going to and fro, wanting to understand this, and their knowledge of God's plan and purpose is going to increase from the book of Daniel. Now, I think we can apply this to our lives today. As the years roll on and more is happening in our world, our understanding of prophecy today increases. But we aren't in the end times yet. The tribulation hasn't begun, but I do think we can see the stage being set. And think about this, believers today, we understand the book of Daniel much better than Daniel did because of the times we live in. So we can apply this to our lives today as things are happening, but the ultimate interpretation and application of this passage will be for Jewish people in the end time. They're going to want to know these things. They're going to study the book of Daniel, and the knowledge of Daniel and God's plans and purposes will increase. May God help us, though, in the time in which we live, for our eyes to go to and fro in the Scripture, and for us to have our knowledge of Bible prophecy and what's happening in this world increase. And I hope that Marking the Times is helping you with that in your life. Well, thank you so much. Keep sending in those good questions. God bless you. We'll see you next time.